So
Okay.
15a at the very bottom. So it says Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak Tana Shochet. So the Tana came to and taught the halacha of Rav Meir's leniency even by shchita, by slaughter. Let's see. Tana came to Rav Hashochet b'Shabbat Shogeg Yochel Mezelo Yochel. So all of a sudden, the Tana said that one who shacks on Shabbos inadvertently could eat the food, but b'mezid lo yochel. He does it deliberately, then he cannot eat the food. So to which the response was, Amarle ma'adaitech. Who do you hold like? Now, earlier we had a very, very important machlokas Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. We'll focus on those two out of the three opinions. Was cooking inadvertently on Shabbos. Rav Meir is the lenient one. He permitted it, and Rabbi Yehuda was stringent and he prohibited it until after Shabbos. So the question is slaughtering going to have the same halachas as cooking? So this Tana taught that it does. To which the response of Rav was, well, what are you thinking? If you're thinking like Rav Meir, hold on. Ad kan lo kashay Rav Meir ela b'mevashel deroi lachos. Aval shochet denoi lachos lo. The problem is that there's two things. There's the actual forbidden act, cooking, slaughtering. Then there's a muktzah problem. So that which Rav Meir allowed when you did something inadvertently was by shchita, because it was by cooking, because there we assume the raw food you can chew it. If you need to, it's somewhat edible. You could chew it. Shchita, when the animal's alive, you can't. So going into Shabbos at sundown, the one food was edible and one food was not. So Rav Meir only allowed this leniency, so to speak, of doing an act inadvertently and not prohibiting it. That's assuming that there's no muktzah problem. But if there's a muktzah problem, so then there's nothing to talk about. So by shchita, slaughtering, there's a muktzah problem. So shochet den lachos lo. It's not fit for any chewing. Wasn't fit for you at all. So therefore, you cannot benefit from it. Hi, our Mishnah, the Hamas Nisan Dishochedu. Our Mishnah says one who slaughters. Vam Rav Huna Darish Chia Bar Rav Mishmei de Rav Asura Ba'achila Liyoma. And we said that Rav is the first Gemara on the Mishnah. Rav commented and said on our Mishnah, if you end up slaughtering it, it's prohibited for that day. And V'naz ben Chavarai L'meimar, and his friends gathered up, his colleagues, and they said, whose opinion is Rav going like? The opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, which implies that if our Mishnah says that one who slaughters, it's prohibited for that day, and those opinions were the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that implies that Rav Meir Shari, according to Rav Meir, it's going to be permitted. Oh, so what are you telling me? Rav Meir only allows by cooking for you to eat it that day if you do it inadvertently, according to the colleagues of Rav who said that Rav's statement on our Mishnah that it's prohibited for that day is Rabbi Yehuda. That implies that according to Rav Meir, it's going to be permitted. And here we're talking about raw meat. You're not able to chew it when it's alive. So we say, no. Kika Shari, when does Rav Meir say? Kika Shari, Rabbi Meir, could go, next page. Could go in Shahaya Lo Chola Mi Ba'od Yom. Rav Meir allows the shchita when you have someone sick in the house from Erev Shabbos. So from Erev Shabbos, we have someone sick in the house, and therefore there's no problem of muktzah over here. The animal was set aside for the sick person, and there's no problem of violating Shabbos, because it's for somebody who needs this animal to live on Shabbos. So therefore, there's no problem. According to Rav Meir, a inadvertent act is not a prohibition which is prohibited from benefiting. According to Rav Meir, if he's sick, we set it aside, it's going to be used on Shabbos. So there's no problem. That's when Rav Meir allowed it. The question is, it's too good. If that's so, my time Rabbi Yehuda Aser. What's the case of Rabbi Yehuda where he prohibits it? where you had someone who's sick, and then on Shabbos, the Hivri, and he got better. So now he was sick Erev Shabbos, so there's no muktzah. On Shabbos, now he got better. If you slaughter inadvertently, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's a prohibition. That's going to require a prohibition of benefit, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, an inadvertent act is you cannot benefit from an inadvertent act. It's called an aveira, and therefore you can't benefit from it. According to Rav Meir, it's not considered a level of an aveira that is prohibited from benefit. Rather, you could benefit from it. So that's the case according to Rabbi Yehuda, where you're going to permit it. V'chihad amar Rav Acha bar Ada amar Rav v'amrila amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ada amar Rav. So some Rav Acha bar Ada, the name of Rav, or some say Rav Yitzchak bar Ada, the name of Rav. Hashoche l'chol b'Shabbos aser lebari. One who slaughters on Shabbos it's prohibited from a healthy person to benefit. However, hamevashel l'chol b'Shabbos mutar lebari. But if you cook for a sick person on Shabbos, so then it's permitted for a healthy person to benefit from it. Now, this sick person became sick on Shabbos. So the question is, did the person do an act for you or not? So when you slaughter animal, we're going to see now, my time, so by cooking on Shabbos, we say if you cook for a sick person, so then when you cook for a sick person, a healthy person can eat because the meat was already shechted from Erev Shabbos, and therefore there's no muktzah problem. And since there's no muktzah problem, so you are good to go. He cooked on Shabbos. He didn't do it for you. He cooked for the sick person. Cooking for the sick person is totally permitted. So he didn't do anything wrong. You're allowed to cook for a sick person. There's no muktzah problem. So what's the problem? However, slaughtering for a sick person on Shabbos, there's a muktzah problem. Erev Shabbos, the animal was here. You couldn't, it's muktzah. So for you, it was muktzah. Now the sick person who became sick on Shabbos, if he was sick Erev Shabbos, no muktzah. But he became sick on Shabbos. Right now, it's permitted for him to benefit from the animal. You can slaughter for him. But for you, it was still muktzah, and therefore it's prohibited. However, Amar of Papa Pa'amim Sha'ashokin Mutter. Sometimes you could slaughter for a sick person, and it will be permitted for a healthy person. There's a sick person from yesterday. Erev Shabbos, he's sick. So the Erev Shabbos, he's sick. So there's no muktzah problem. And he's not slaughtering for you. So you can benefit from it. However, and mevashel aser, but sometimes cooking will be prohibited. What's the case? Kigon shekatzatz lo delas. So simply understood, the gourd was still attached to the ground going into Shabbos. So that's a muktzah problem. It's not set aside. But now a sick person needs it. So you're allowed to pick it and cook it for him. But there's a muktzah problem, and therefore it's prohibited. So general rule of thumb is that cooking is something that was already not muktzah Erev Shabbos. It was fit for chewing, and therefore you're good to go. However, sometimes it'll be prohibited to eat cooked food for a sick person, as long as such is the case of a muktzah problem where the gourd was attached to the ground Erev Shabbos. So you always have to figure out two things. One, is the act permitted or prohibited? So if it's for a sick person, the act is permitted. If it's for another person, it would be an inadvertent act, assuming he did it inadvertently. That's a machlokas of Meir Rabbi Yehuda. But then there's always the muktzah question. So if the animal is alive and there's no sick person Erev Shabbos, muktzah. If there's a sick person Erev Shabbos, not muktzah. If the food is ready, it's already been slaughtered, but it's raw, you could chew it, not muktzah. If the gourd is attached to the ground, going into Shabbos, muktzah. So, Amar Rav Dimi min Hardar. Rav Dimi from Hardar says the following. says as follows. Hilchasa, the halakha is like this. Hashoka the Kollel b'Shabbos, one who slaughters an animal for a sick person on Shabbos, mutar lebari be'umtza. So he actually says it's allowed, a healthy person is allowed to chew from that meat. Why? What happened to why is it permitted? Now, we're assuming this sick person was sick before Shabbos. Yeah. Because then there's no muktzah problem. If he was not sick, there's no muktzah problem. So a guy's sick, Erev Shabbos, sick enough that you're allowed to slaughter for him. So there's no problem. My time, I came into Erev Shabbos, eyes also below Shechita. Now, what are you worried about? You're worried about that maybe he didn't act for you. He did act for the sick person. Now, the way you shecht, you can't split it up. It's if you want one little piece of meat, you have to slaughter the entire animal. There's no way to get a piece of meat from this animal without slaughtering and killing the entire animal. So even though the sick person only needs, let's say, an olive's worth of meat, but the only way to get it is by one big slaughter. So therefore, we don't view it like the shochet did anything for you, healthy person. The way you get one little piece of meat is by slaughtering the entire animal. So therefore, kika shochet adaita the cholaka shochet. He shechted, even though he has enough food to feed now, 20 people. It's a lot of steak, but his whole intention when he's shechting is only for the sick person. However, hamevashel Kollel b'Shabbos, if one cooks for a sick person on Shabbos, asur lebari, then a healthy person cannot benefit. Why? We're worried. We're worried that if he's cooking for the sick person, he cooks whatever the sick person eats. So he has a few pieces of chicken in the pot, cooking chicken soup. But now what's going to happen? If we allow you to benefit from it, then you're going to ask him, or he might see that you want, he's going to put in more food for you. Now that's prohibited. He cannot put in more food for you. That's there's no leniency to do that. That's prohibited. So that would be the difference between shechita and cooking. Shechita, what can you do? If you only want one little piece, you got to slaughter the whole animal. So we don't say the guy is shechting for you, even though he's providing for 20 people meat. As opposed to cooking, if you do benefit from it, then might start cooking for you, and that's prohibited.
You understand? Giving a sick person to eat, to chew the raw meat. A healthy person have a problem.
Because it's unhealthy.
No, because it hasn't been consulted, it hasn't been kasher.
Here, very good, very good. I think they bring a proof from here that by raw meat, it doesn't have to be salted. I don't know. There's a whole discussion about it. Yeah, I think so. Only when you have to. I'm not sure more about it, but yeah, this would be a proof. I think something that has a proof that by raw meat that you're going to chew, you don't need to salt it. Yeah, very good, very good. Salt what? What's salt what? Oh, interesting.
Except the whole way of doing it is salting.
Yeah, that's good thing to look into. Salting for raw meat. It would seem from here that eating raw meat does not need salting. Yeah. But it could be others argue, I don't know, and then you have to figure out what to do with the Gemara. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting situation where you're chewing the raw meat. I don't know. We don't view it as edible, right? Because on Shabbos, Michael ben Josiah, a third cook is considered edible, even a robber would eat, but chewing on it, they would chew it, I guess. So that's enough. The fact that you would chew on it, sounds like you wouldn't necessarily swallow it, but you would chew it, is enough to not make it muktzah at least. Somebody mentioned it wrong. Not on the page. Okay, now it's the materials that you're allowed to shecht with. So, hashochet b'magal yad, a hand sickle, or betsur. I think it really means like a rock. It means really flint. Ubekana, or a reed. Shchita sok shera. That shchita is valid. Hakol shochten, ula olam shochten. Cryptic statement the Gemara is going to ask. Everyone checks. You could always check. Ubekol shochten, with everything you could check, except for things that are serrated. Chutz mi magel tzir, the sickle of the harvest. The ha magera, a saw. The ha shinaim, with a tooth. The ha tziporin, and with a nail, mipnei shehein chonkin, because these can cause strangulation and choking of the animal. Rashi points out that's not going on the fingernail; it's going on the other ones. The fingernails can have its own reasoning in the Gemara, but the serrated sickle, saw, things like that, tooth, those things can cause choking, and therefore it is prohibited. Says the Gemara, hashochet, it sounds like one who does it, but lechatchila you shouldn't do. Ideally, you shouldn't do it. Hashochet, you have it in lechatchila lo. After the fact, post facto, if you end up doing it with a hand sickle or a flint or reed, it's good to go, but ideally you shouldn't do it. Says the Gemara, Pishma b'magal yad dilma asi lemavid beidach gisa. If you have the hand sickle, you might come to slaughter it with the other side of the sickle, which is serrated. What has like two parts on it, sticking out? Two blades, yeah. So that I understand. Why would a flint and a reed, ideally, you can't slaughter them? Why not? We see you can check with anything, even ideally. Flint, glass, literally like the membrane of the reed, the sharp part of the reed. Says the Gemara, no. Lo kasha, it depends. Kan betolush, kan b'mechuber. It depends if it's attached to the ground or not. So one opinion holds if it's attached to the ground, that you cannot shecht with something attached to the ground. It has to be detached from the ground. Where do we find such a halacha? The Amar of Kahana shoged b'mechuber lekarka, Rebbe Puzzle, Rebbe Chia Makshir. If you shecht with something attached to the ground, Rebbe invalidates. We'll see why later. It's a verse, and Rebbe Chia allows it. Ad kan lo kamakshir Rebbe Chia ela b'diavad aval lechatchila lo. Even Rebbe Chia that allows doing it, but it's not ideal. It's only post facto. It's good. So we ask the question. It sounds like our Mishnah. It sounds like our Mishnah is b'diavad, but the brisa is lechatchila, ideal. The answer is when it's removed, it's the brisa. It's ideal. When it's attached to the ground, according to Rebbe Chia, it's going to be even post. It's going to be b'diavad. Yeah. But Mayu came to Rebbe Chia b'diavad. Why do you assume we're saying that our Mishnah is Rebbe Chia and it's post facto? Elahad the time you look at the Mishnah, because shoktim b'mitalish b'mechuber. The brisa says you can check with anything, detached, attached, bein sheh sakin lemala, the knife on top, v'tzavar behema lamata, and the neck of the animal is below, bein sheh sakin lamata, v'tzavar behema lamala, whether the knife is below and the neck of the animal is above. So one sec, who's this brisa like? So ideally you could do it even with things that are attached. Well, money, low Rebbe, because he prohibits even post facto things that are attached. Below Rebbe Chia, he says, ideally you shouldn't use attached to the ground things. So either Rebbe Chia, if it's Rebbe Chia, then post facto is good, but ideally you shouldn't do it. So who's the brisa like? Rebbe, namilo. According to Rebbe, you can never use something which is attached to the ground. So we say, it's Rebbe Chia, and now we're making a second distinction. The first distinction was attached versus detached. Now we're saying, why is it attached? It's still attached in its natural state, or you detached it and then reattached it. So, sorry, not yet. I jumped the gun. Sorry. Really, it's Rebbe Chia. And it's even something which is ideal, even something which is detached, is even lechatchila. If that's true, so why are they arguing about the high the kamiflage b'diavad? Why are they arguing about a situation of post facto? Lehodia kocha the Rebbe. That Rebbe is so stringent that even post facto he prohibits it. But really, Rebbe Chia holds, even if it's attached to the ground, it's fine, even lechatchila. They argue by a case of b'diavad, of post facto, to show you how stringent Rebbe is. That even post facto, if it's attached to the ground, it's no good. But you're right, Rabbi Chia would allow in both, even ideally, something attached to the ground. Our Mishnah. What's with our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is post facto. Is after the fact. One who does it. Ideally, you shouldn't do it. Money, lo Rebbe, lo Rebbe Chia. It's not Rebbe, it's not Rebbe Chia. According to what you're telling me now, if it's Rebbe Chia, it should be even ideally, not after the fact. And Rebbe, after the fact, still no good. Rebbe, so who's our Mishnah like? So we say, Li'olam Rebbe Chia. Really, it's Rebbe Chia. And even ideally, you can shecht with something attached to the ground. Umasnisen dikatani hashoche. Rebbe, the one, our Mishnah that says that b'diavad it's good, is the opinion of Rebbe. Says the one, hold on. How do you say that? Kasha de Rebbe, the Rebbe. That's a kasha. Rebbe, you told me, even when it's attached to the ground, after the fact is no good. And now you're telling me that our Mishnah is Rebbe. How could it be? Low kasha. So here it matters how was attached to the ground. If it's attached, still attached in its natural state, Rebbe says no good. Our Mishnah that says after the fact it is good is talking about a case where it's attached, detached, and reattached. Kan b'mechuber mi'ikaro, when it's attached and it's still in its original state, that Rebbe says is no good ever. Kan b'tolush u'letzof chibro. Here it's where it's detached and then attached. And therefore, it's going to be good. So right now, we're saying that Rabbi Chia holds there's no problem, even ideally, take something attached to the ground and check with it. According to Rebbe, we're saying it depends. Is it attached because it's in its natural state? If yes, it's never good, even after the fact. If it was attached, detached, and reattached, so then after the fact, it's good. But lechatchila, ideally, it's always not going to be good. Where do you find that we have a distinction between something attached in its natural state and detached and reattached? Where do you find such a distinction? The Tanya, it says in the following brisa, "Hashoche b'muchani." This is some kind of wheel with a knife attached to it, and when you turn the wheel, the knife shechs the animal. So, hashoche b'muchani shchita so kshera. If you slaughter with some kind of machine with a knife, the wheel with a knife inside, it's a good slaughtering. B'mechuber lekarko shchita so kshera. If it's attached to the ground, totally fine. Na'at sucking b'kosel. You suck a knife into the wall, the shachat ba, and you slaughter it like that. Shchita so kshera. Hayatzur yotem in a kosel. There was some flint protruding from the wall. O kana ola me'elav, or a reed that came out on its own, and you slaughtered v'shachat bo shchita so psula. The shchita is no good. Now, in this brisa itself is an internal contradiction. Why? The second case the brisa says, attached to the ground, slaughtering is good. The last cases were a reed that comes up from the ground, it's a bad slaughtering. So that is, next page, kashan ahadadi. That is a contradiction. Which one is it? Is attached to the ground good or not good? So what are you going to say? It depends what kind of attached. Elav shmamina, shiny ben mechuber, mikaro, letalush, ulabasof, chibru, shmamina. You have to say that the brisa is talking about two kinds of attachments. The one that's in the end of the brisa of the reed is attached, and it's still in its natural state, so it's no good. The beginning of the brisa is a case where it was attached, detached, and reattached. So at the end of the day, our Mishnah goes like Rebbe, and the reason why it is b'diavad, it's only after the fact, is because it's something that used to grow in the ground, got detached and reattached. But if it was something attached the whole time, still in its natural state, that is going to be prohibited according to our Mishnah. Amar Mar, hashoche b'muchani shchita so kshera. So you have a knife in this wheel, and you turn the wheel and it shechs the animal. That the brisa said is a good slaughtering. V'hatanya shchita so psula. But it says, not on the brisa. But it says in a different brisa, that putting a knife in a wheel and turning it is going to be invalid. So it's a contradiction in the brisas. Lo kasha, it depends. Ha bisarna de pachra, ha bisarna de maya. So one is you put a knife into it's like a wheel for potters. So I'm not sure exactly what they use it for their pottery. Oh, the clay spins. The clay spins. Okay, so that's one case, and the other case is a sarna de pachra. So that is a water. So sarna de maya, that's invalid because the pottery one, you yourself are doing it. So it's your strength that's really slaughtering the animal. You're turning the pottery wheel. However, the water mill, it's really the water turning it. And the shechita has to come from you, not from the water. So if water pushes the wheel and then it slaughters the animal, that's not going to be good. That's the first answer. Second answer, they're both talking about the water wheels. V'bais ema havaha b'sarna demaya below kasha, and now it depends. So you start the turning, and then the water takes over. So if you started the turning, and then that original turn, which is your koach, your strength, it slaughters the animal. That's called koach rishon. That's the first, push of word. The first push of strength is that's you. So then it's going to be kosher. But if it's you push it and then afterwards, then the water push it and then the animal was shechted, that's called a koach sheni. That's already called you caused the shechita, but not that you did the shechita. So lokash habakok rishon habakok sheni. As we have in the following case, I'm sure this has happened to you many times. You tied up your friend, and you put him in the water, and then he dies. If you tie up your friend, you put him in the water, he drowns. He drowned because of you. So my time at Giri today, it's your arrows. Just like shooting an arrow, you don't say when you shoot an arrow into somebody, or nowadays you shoot a gun to somebody. Maybe nowadays, and if you get a good lawyer, they will say this, but generally, if you shoot someone, you don't say it wasn't me, it was the bullet. I didn't do it. So you don't say by throwing someone in the water tied up, it wasn't me, it was the water that drowned him. If the water wouldn't have been there, he would have just hit the earth. So it wasn't me. Right? You don't say that. So why? Because Giri Dehu Dahani Bay, my arrows is what caused it. However, that's only Hanimili Bikoach Rishon. Aval Bikoach Sheni Groma Ba'almahu. But if you put him in the water and your placing in the water did not kill him, and then let's say maybe more of a current came and ended up washing him away. So then we say it's grama. It's I caused a situation where he's going to cause, but it's a causative act, and therefore you're still liable death in the hands of heaven, but not death down here in a human court. But that's called grama. That's called koach sheni. So koach sheni is something which is less stringent. So to here, if you do shechita, slaughtering with a koach sheni, then it's not going to be good. Yosef Rav was sitting behind Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia kamei the Rebbe, and Rabbi Chia in front of Rebbe. Yosef Rebbe, and Rebbe was sitting and was saying as follows: "Kamar minayin." This is Rebbe's opinion. How do I know that something attached to the ground is invalid for slaughtering? How do I know? Minayin l'shchita shehibit betolush, that slaughtering has to be when it's detached. Shenamar v'yikach asamachel lishkot. A number of laws are learned from Akedas Yitzchak, sacrificing of Yitzchak. One of them was he took the knife. Why didn't he use something which was attached to the ground? Why did he take a knife? Oh, so Rebbe says he had to take a knife because if you don't take a knife, it's not considered a valid slaughtering. Amalei Rav the Rebbe Chia, Mai Kamar, Amalei. It's like avav dechsiv a'ufta kamar. I guess the example of something which is not a good statement is it sounds like if you draw a vav, you write a vav into the trunk of a tree. So when you write that letter, it's going to be very choppy. So too, this teaching is very choppy. It's not accurate. The reason why he took a knife, the pasuk kamar krad is you say the Avram Kamash Malan. The pasuk was just telling you that he brought with him a knife just in case he couldn't find flint to Shecht Yitzchak. That's all it was. But you don't see more than that. So this teaching is like very choppy. You're right. He took a knife, but he took a knife for being extra cautious, not because without the knife he couldn't Shecht. That's not why he took it. So really, a machlokas, Rebbe and Rabbi Chia had to learn the pasuk of Avram took a knife because he had to, or a knife for extra precautionary reasons. Yeah. 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 Okay. Amar Rava says, Pshita li the talish b'sayv chibru le'inyan avos kachavim havi talish. So when a person bows down to idols, so usually the object that you're bowing down to becomes forbidden. You can't get any benefit from it. The question is though, but that's only on something which is detached. That's what Rava says. For sure, Pshita li the talish b'sayv chibru. If it's detached and you reattached it, so the inyan avodos kachavim havi talish. In terms of idol worship, that's for sure going to be considered detached, and therefore it will be prohibited from benefit. The Amar Mar, as Master said, if you bow down to a house, how's the house made? From stones. So they came from the ground, you chopped out, you cut out the stone and built the house. So what if now someone bows down to the house as their god? So that's prohibited. Oh, you see from here that because it's not considered attached. It's really considered detached. So anyone tell me, well, it's attached to the ground, so shouldn't it be permitted for benefit? We say the pasuk says Eloheihem, their gods, al haharim, that are on the mountains. Velo haharim Eloheihem, but their mountains themselves are not the gods. So it's only something which is detached, that's on top of the mountain, becomes forbidden from benefit, but the mountain itself doesn't. Fine, that's by avodah zarah. What about making something susceptible to impurity? So if water hits a vessel that you want to get wet, and from that vessel, it splatters on your fruits. So now the fruits are wet. They are susceptible to becoming impure. But that's only if something is detached. If something is attached, so I don't know, the roof of the house. Well, the house is our question, but something which is attached to the ground, and that gets wet, and that splatters on your fruits. That's not going to be susceptible to impurity. Yeah. It needs to be a kli. What? Yeah, drips off a tree, right? That presumably is not going to work. One second. Yeah. Okay. Rashi brings that there are certain cases that you have intention to okay, let's stick with the regular case. Yeah. So it has to be detached. So now Ein Hechsher Zroyim is actually a machlokas tanaim, 2 opinions. Let's see. The Tanan, Hakofik Ka'ara ala Kosel. You have let's say a bowl, and you flip it over on the wall. B'shvil shetudach, you want to get washed. Harezeh b'chiyutin. B'chiyutin is the pasuk that talks about making things susceptible for impurity. That's included in the you want it to get wet category. So if you want the bowl to get washed, and from the bowl it causes the fruits to get wet, they will be susceptible to impurity. However, we say now bishvil shlo yilka kosel. But the reason, if the reason is you put the bowl on the wall so the wall doesn't get wet, so that's eina b'chiyutan. That you don't want the bowl to get wet, you want the wall to not get wet. So you don't have an intention for something getting wet. So even if now the fruits get wet, it's not going to be considered susceptible for impurity. Says the Gemara, Hagufa Kasha. We're going to have an internal contradiction as follows. Amris, you just told me if the bowl, you want the bowl to get wet, that's included in our verse b'chiyutan, and that will cause, if that gets fruits wet, it'll cause susceptibility to impurity. But what's the inference? If you want the wall to get wet, but you want to get wet through the means of the bowl, maybe it hits the wall less hard. So you want the wall to get a little bit dripped, not just to get pounded on. So you put the bowl on the wall, but you want the wall to get wet. Implication is that is not good. That's not included. But then you told me the opposite extreme. If your whole intention of putting the bowl onto the wall is you don't want the wall to get wet at all, then that's eina b'chitan. That's not included in the pasuk of being susceptible to impurity. But what's the inference? But if you put the bowl there for the wall to get wet, that is included. So we have two extremes. We have the extreme of only the bowl getting wet. But if it was for the wall to get wet by means of the bowl, it's no good. Then we have the wall to not get wet. And if the wall doesn't get wet, then we have, if you want the bowl to cause the wall to get wet, then it is good. So which one is it? That's an internal contradiction. So Amar of Elazar, first answer is Tavra Mishanazu Lo Shanazu. One who the one who taught that part of the Brisa did not teach this part. Yeah, it's two different authors because it's a contradiction. So our only way out is to say it's two different authors. Rav Papa Amar Kulo Chatan. No, really, it's all one author. Internal contradiction. What do you talk? How do you answer? Ha be kosel ma'ara. Ha be kosel binyan. One is talking about the kosel of a ma'ara, of a cave, which is attached to the ground. Such a thing is not going to be susceptible to impurity. But ha be kosel binyan. But one's attached to the wall of a structure. The haki kamer, and this is how you read it. Hakofakar ala kosel b'shusha tudach. If you put the bowl on the wall, which is attached, detached, and then reattached, so b'shosha tudach hareze b'chiyutan for the bowl to get wet, it'll cause susceptibility to impurity. But ha b'shosha tudach hakosel ein ze b'chiyutan. But if you want the wall to get wet, it's not going to work. But when is it not going to work? B'kotel ma'ara, by the wall of a cave, which is a naturally grown wall. Aval b'kosel binyan b'shosha lo yilka kosel. Hudeina b'chiyutan v'ha b'shosha yilka kosel hareze b'chiyutan. That if it's the wall of a building which is considered attached, then detached and reattached, so then if you want it to get wet, even via the bowl, then if from that bowl to the wall to your fruits, that will cause susceptibility to impurity.